here is my very dear friend and colleague, Gregory Kunde, the extraordinary tenor with two free careers to his credits, more roles than you can think about. Gregory, I am in California. It's too hot, but I still put a shirt for the show. And where are you? Are you in the Bahamas? Are you?
I'm in the, yes, I'm thinking about the Bahamas actually, but I am in Rochester, New York, where it's a little bit chilly. I'll give you a shot of our
Yeah.
outside, our snow
Oh my
outside.
God. Okay.
Yeah, so it's we've had about 8 inches of snow, and we'll probably get a bit more. Actually, downstate in New York City, they've got quite a bit more, but
Yeah, I know. I know.
we got lucky this time. So yeah, it's cold here. It's 20 degrees.
Right.
And
So you have this amazing house. You have had this house for a long time. How was COVID for you? I mean, weren't you lucky to have a big home like this?
you know, Emmanuel, we were very, very lucky. We because we had this a beautiful place, and staying inside for us was really, it was a pleasure. I say to my friends, and I'll say it to you now, I have never been together with my wife this long in our entire marriage of 30 years.
Right.
We were
Right.
always working, you know. So having not worked since last March, it's been quite a ride. But yeah, no, it's great to have a place here, and Rochester is beautiful in the spring, summer, and fall, and just we get snow now, and we'll be snowy until probably the first part of April. But yeah, no, it's been fantastic here. Our lockdowns, because we're in a sort of not, we're not in Manhattan in New York, we're upstate, Western New York. So our restrictions have been a little less stringent. We've
Right.
had indoor dining for since last October, and it's really not been a problem. 50% seating. The only problem was my daughter Isabella was supposed to go to Ithaca College, which is downstate, and they decided not to go in person. So she did her first semester of university in a dining room. So that was not too pleasant for her, and she decided to switch schools. She goes to the Rochester Institute of Technology now, and she started classes in person in a dorm room, online. I'm sorry, not one class online, but she's in a dorm room since last week, so she's very
Okay.
happy to be
Are,
there.
are you teaching at all online? Did you jump into that new activity
You
like your
know,
colleagues?
I did a couple of master classes. I don't really have any students that I teach online, but I'm scheduled to do a couple more master classes as well. I enjoy those very much. Teaching online is really difficult, from what I understand. I've not done it. I heard colleagues say it's a nightmare trying to teach voice online with a pianist somewhere else, and
Right.
it's really, the delay is really difficult. So.
All right. So some of your colleagues have been able to find a good way to work this out. And the ones who were doing it before because they were on the road and they were, they have a faculty position and they were teaching them, they knew how to do this, the type of.
Yeah.
So for the people who are not in the industry or who have been living in a cave for the last 30 years, Gregory is an extraordinary tenor with an incredible career, and a career that has had two big moments or two big chunks, two big periods. The first period, Gregory was the Rossinian tenor of reference with this amazing, I guess, extension,
Yeah.
tenorino, falsetto qualities in his voice, with very, very, very high, way above the high C, and this agility and incredible projection. And then nowadays, Gregory is the tenor of reference for Othello, Samson, and some of the big Verdi roles, or some of the roles that are on the side of big lyric, dramatic, and even four tenor, French four tenor, and still I must say with a top that is not like your colleagues in those roles, which is very secure, very well projecting, which is not either push shades voice or head voice, but which feels so blooming, so full. And as a conductor, you always know when the high note is coming and how difficult it's going to be. in a 2 or 3 or 4 bars, and you pull the brakes, or you just push to hide through, or you push the orchestra higher because you know it's not going to make it. I never had that feeling in all the shows we have done together. So we have worked
Yeah.
together on L'Africaine at the Fenice, which is like, it's like an audition that you extend and extend and extend.
Yeah, exactly.
The guy, just can't anymore. And you say, okay, this guy can sing for 5 hours, not 4 hours, 30 minutes. Okay. Um, and then we did not La Rondine. We did Manon Lescaut,
Manon Lescaut, yeah.
Puccini together in Dallas and in Barcelona. And I mean, you are an extraordinary artist with an incredible musicianship, and still in that new repertoire, a certain vocal ease and facility that is absolutely unmatched and remarkable.
Thank you.
What happened between this first period in your career and the second period in your career, and how vocally and in terms of career management were you able to do that passage from this to that?
It's very it's very not usual, this story. I don't hear it very often. People going from the I would have called my repertoire bel canto, more than Rossini,
Right.
with Bellini and Donizetti and some of the French composers at the time as well. But because I learned that bel canto technique since, I guess, the late 80s, and had done it for 20 some years, singing really only those things. When I got to the end of that period, I could feel it. I knew that those roles were not as comfortable as they used to be. Even though the extension was still there, even though the voice was still there, I could feel that the voice was getting heavier.
Mhm.
And I really didn't know what to do at the time. This is we're going to say like 2006, 2007.
Uh-huh.
And so there was a transition period there where um, things like I was singing Barbiere di Siviglia, which was, it, even at the time, I never really liked the role, but it was really uncomfortable trying to sing that role. So I switched into the so-called baritone roles.
What was uncomfortable about it? Was it like your voice was getting heavier, and so
Yeah,
you
it,
think
it was it was heavier, and the agility was more difficult. Not so much to sustain the line, but the voice really was not, it was not appropriate for that music anymore. So I was lucky to find two things. One were the roles of Nozzari, the Rossini roles, the more serious roles. So he's a baritone of Rossini's day. Otello of Rossini is one of the roles. Antenore in Zelmira, Rodrigo in Donna del Lago. In the serious Rossini you have two tenors normally, two protagonists. One's the more lyric and more agile tenor, and the other was the Nozzari role. He still had the high notes,
right,
but was more baritonal.
right.
So that helped me. But what also helped me before that was Berlioz, which I was asked to sing Benvenuto Cellini back in 2003. John
Mhm.
Elliott Gardner asked me to sing it, and I thought he was crazy because I always thought of Berlioz being almost a Wagnerian, because the way we used to play it in those days with huge orchestras and things like that.
Right.
He said, no, 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 you have to do your research because Berlioz was in Rossini's time. It's
Right.
really built in the bel canto era. And I thought, what? Anyway, I sang Cellini. I sang Damnation de Faust many, many times, which became a very, very big role for me. And then was able to sing also Les Troyens with John Elliott,
Right.
and that changed my whole outlook on how to use that bel canto technique that I had in a more quote unquote heavy role.
Right.
Aeneas, Aeneas, who sang Aeneas
Right.
in history, John Vickers,
Yes.
Mario del Monaco, and these
Yeah.
people. It wouldn't be for me, but it worked very well anyway. So then I knew that I had a choice to make. I either stop and teach, or I find something else. And my Italian manager said, "Look, why don't you try Norma?" And so I sang Norma in 2009, and that was a revelation as well, because we always think of Bellini as Bellini, but this is real, meaty Bellini, Pollione.
Actually, the same Helden tenors or large tenors who, were singing Aeneas in the way you were talking about, they also
Right.
on
Also
Polio.
saying Polione, sure,
Yeah.
of course. And so I tried it, and I listened to recordings of Vickers, and I listened to recordings of Del Monaco, and I listened to some of the big heavy tenors. And I said, when I was studying, I said, I can't do it. So it was a revelation for me, because I'm studying it here at the piano, and I closed the book, and I saw Bellini, Norma, and I thought, damn it, this is Bellini. Sing it like it's Bellini. Try it. And by God, it worked. And it was just amazing. And it worked.
Mhm.
And I thought, and no matter what I do from this point on, I'm going to sing it with the voice that I know how to use, the technique that I know. Even though the voice had expanded, you can still use the same technique. And that's why the high notes have not gone away. And that's why the quote unquote, as you say, the ease of the high notes is still there, because I learned how to sing them, singing Cenerentola and singing Damnation de Faust, that has the big top C
Right.
sharp in it.
Right.
But so that's how I made the transition, and it was sort of just a natural thing, just follow what my voice was doing, and had the opportunity to sing Vespri Siciliani. This was now 10 years ago. It was really my re-debut in Verdi. I had sung Traviata and Rigoletto before, but it was the real first big Verdi role, and it worked, and we continued to go in that same manner. So
But
that's been my technique.
so the technique is the same. The voice has evolved, but singing those roles as that in a way expanded the voice too. Because what I have seen, for instance, I'm going to take the example of, and this is a faulty comparison, of course, and because it's faulty, might learn something about it. Um, my dear friend Nathalie Dessay, she was like this incredible coloratura singing up to IA or easily
Yeah,
F, kind
we
of
did we did Lakme together, and I sang Sonambula with her as
right.
well.
An
Yes, lovely,
incredible
lovely.
artist. But Natalie would say it herself. When the voice went down, it was new territories. She could sing, but the voice did not get large enough or strong enough to sustain that new ambitus, that new
Yes, new.
text.
I would have called it tessitura. Yeah, because your
Tessitura,
tessitura goes
exactly.
down, right?
Yeah, the tessitura
Right.
went down, and didn't work for her. For you, it worked because not only the tessitura was lower, but probably the voice expanded. Is the voice still expanding? Not only because it's where it sits naturally, but because you are singing those roles. Are you careful about this? The danger, it seems, that if you push the bottom, you lose the top. Correct. So
You can, yeah.
how are you dealing with that? Do you just think, I'm going to sing it with my same technique, or do you think, how can I darken this in the lower register?
Yeah, no, I don't ever think that way, because I always in the back of my mind, they come to hear the high notes. So
Yeah.
you know, and if the lower notes don't sound incredibly baritonal, it's not a problem for
Yeah.
me. But you sing them as well as you can. But for me, it was age. I mean, Natalie when she started to sing the bigger roles. This is not a criticism, but you have to be older. It's your body. Your body helps you with that. It's a natural process. This was told to me when I was 25 years old back in Chicago, and I was studying with the great Alfredo Kraus, and my voice was about that big right there. And so he taught me how to keep the voice in the head, and that was his technique. Many people say it's all in the nose. No, it's all up in here, and it's all putting the sound in the forehead. So even with a small voice that I had, I was able to make it heard, even though it sounded like a little gnat, but you could hear it. But he said, "Look, you're not going to really know what your voice can do until you're about 50 years old." And he was actually 50 at the time he told me that. And I was like, well, okay, well, what do I do for 25 years? So He said, no, you do the things that you're comfortable with. You sing in the repertory that you know you can sing, and never go past that. And he
Right.
was absolutely right. And about, I guess I was about 52 or 53 when I really felt like, now I can, it's like a Ferrari. If you have a Ferrari and you have it in town here, you can only put it in maybe third gear, and that's as
Right.
fast as you're going to get it to go. But I I finally decided that I'm going to use that extra gear, or maybe two gears, and see what happens.
Right.
And when I tried it, it was a little bit scary, but I didn't feel any effects. So you kind of expand that even more, so you know that I can do this even at 80%. The voice is bigger than it's ever been before, so I don't really have to push it to its limit. And I don't know. It's been a whirlwind for me, Maestro. It's just it's a crazy thing, because people who heard me back in the 80s and the early 90s, and they hear me now, they just say, but that's impossible. How did that even happen?
Well,
Is he
well,
wearing a microphone? What's going on here?
yeah, yeah. So
So
now, you have won that battle, including in convincing people. I mean, nobody is doubting it, and the
that
people
that's a,
who
that was
were.
a big problem, I have to say. Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I mean, what was the reaction, and how were you able to make a case for yourself? Did you find strong pushback from agents, from conductors, from opera houses, and
Yeah.
that's the break
Yes.
that made people convince people finally?
All of the above. All of the above, I have to say. But it's really, it's a strange phenomenon that's happened only in since the 90s, I think, maybe the late 80s and the 90s and early 2000s. The great composer that we know and love, Gioacchino Rossini, had a renaissance, and we all became Rossini specialists. Not all of us, but
Right.
we who became Rossini specialists, most of all tenors were stuck in a pigeonhole. That's what you sing. You have
Yeah.
the agility, you have the high notes, stay there. And there are many other guys who are going through the same thing, but I went through it trying to expand the repertory. No, you're Rossini singing. No, okay. And then when you have no more opportunities, you have to break away. And luckily for me, because we talk about luck in this business, because it really is a lot about luck. I think it was in 2003 or 2004. I was a replacement for, and I don't remember who the tenor was. I was a replacement for the tenor in La Damnation de Faust with Charles Dutoit.
Hmm.
And it was in London. And I went to rehearse, and he didn't want to rehearse.
Right.
Not because it was me, he just doesn't like to rehearse. I
Mhm.
find that out later. So my first rehearsal with him was in an orchestra rehearsal, the only reading rehearsal, and then we had a dress rehearsal and the performance. He didn't know me from Adam, but they told him that I would be perfect. Anyway, I got in, I sang the rehearsal, and he gave me a few pointers in the intermission, and then we did it. And I did 25 different shows with him of Faust. And because when you get comfortable with someone, you like to use them over and over again. And he did. Wherever
Of
he
course.
went, I was with him. It was fantastic. So I got used to that, and so Faust became a good thing for me. The 2010, I had the same role, and I was singing with Nozeda, and I had never met him before. It was with his orchestra in either Manchester or Birmingham. I'm not sure which one, the BBC Symphony. And my agent, Marco, whom you know, Marco Impallomeni, Marco said, look,
Yeah.
they're looking for someone to sing Vespri. I didn't know Vespri. I never heard the piece before. He said, go do the damnation. If he likes you, he'll ask you to sing the performances, because they really need somebody. So I did an hour of the first rehearsal. He took me back in his office. He said, you got to sing Vespri with me. And I said, Maestro, I don't know what Vespri is, but if you think I can do it, I'll do it. So that was and that was a break for me. And
Right.
it was broadcast on the Rai Cinque. And, and when they put the announcement in the television thing, because it was broadcast on television, Torino was getting calls. Are you sure that's the right tenor? Are you sure? That's impossible.
You're getting this wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it can't. Is
Yeah.
there another Kunde? It can't be Gregory Kunde. No way.
right.
So anyway, it was very successful, and that was the beginning. It only took one thing, and we just
Right.
were off to the races after that. A new career was invented with the Lirico Spinto. So who
And,
knows? That's
and that's amazing. And I think that's what when people tell me, oh my God, my career, I don't have this, I don't have that. People see me like this, see me like that. I say, there are so many examples of course, you might be true. These people have put you into that box.
always
And if you talk to them, you're not going to convince them. But all of a sudden, a few events can change totally their opinion on you.
right.
Everybody in this business is having an opinion on people, even if they didn't hear them. But that opinion, which seems so solid, is changing in one article, one phone call from the friend of the friend who heard,
That's right.
somebody
That's
talk
right.
about.
And I mean, it happened to me. You can't imagine how many different people came up to me. I remember even 2009, I was in the Rossini Festival singing Antenore in Zelmira, and Tony Papano was there to, I don't know, he was there to save Juan Diego, and because we were singing together, and he came up to me at the reception afterwards, and he said, "What happened to you?
Right.
What happened to you?" I said, "Well, you haven't heard me sing for 15 years, so we do grow and we do get
Yes.
mature. The voice gets mature, but that happens, and I guess if you stay with it long enough, you can
Right.
you can continue to make strides with
The
yourself.
lesson is, don't let other people tell you who you are as an artist and as a
That
singer, and
that's
you cannot.
absolutely true. Absolutely
And,
true.
and you have power over this. Um, you let's switch maybe to another topic, because we did this African in at the Fenice. Maybe now we're far enough in time to talk about this. This was one of the most difficult production for me, because we were doing a version of Meyerbeer that was the Fenice version. Meyerbeer is, for the people listening, um, would rewrite his opera according to the city in which it was going to be performed, using even the specific orchestra and orchestration he had. He loved to have several bandas. If he knew there were free banders in town, he would put them. And if
Yes.
they had a double saxophone in E flat, double
Put it
keys,
in there.
he would put it in there. And so the Fenice, one of the historical theater of history of music, um, had the material, the original material that was used for this, but there was actually just fragments of the material and no
Mm.
score and so on. And the material had to be rebuilt. And it was a very difficult process. And as usual in those cases, there were like literally 50 notes mistake by page, not forte instead of piano, just an E flat instead of an E natural,
Oh
in
my God.
both saxophone and so on and so on. That made the whole process for the music staff almost impossible. And this is a very long piece. This is a difficult piece. And for some reason, which were probably bad reason, I arrived late in rehearsal, and it was extremely, extremely taxing. And you were such an amazing colleague, because you had to sing this extraordinarily difficult part. And you had sung L'Africaine. I think you had learned other version maybe before, or you knew some of it. So you get confused with the version. You were such a sport. And I could not at first support you, as a conductor, the way a conductor is supposed to support a singer. Okay, I can hear we need to move a little faster here, or maybe let's cut this, or let's do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like trying to correct the material and survive each rehearsals. And you were, and even at one point we talked, you said, "Don't worry about me, Emmanuel. I understand this is difficult down there because of the material and all of this. I'm here to help you. And if I have a problem, I will let you know. Don't worry about me." And that put such, 50% of the pressure that was on me went down at that moment. And you were very, very smart. Also, in performances, when you needed to move, and I was still working with that saxophone in ear, you just would move and say, "Oh, Gregory's moving. Let's move." And
Oh God.
And so you are one of those singers who is not high maintenance at all, but at the same time who knows very well what he needs and what he wants, who has a musical conception of the piece, and who is able to just convince, get it the way you want, in a way that is never, I never felt like you were pushing me somewhere I wouldn't want to go. So
Well, thank
yeah,
you. Look, here's the reason for that, and I think you probably already know this, is that, I was a conductor first, so that is always in the back of my head, and I really always
perfect. Yeah,
know, I know that we need help. Come on, if we're not being helped, then you just can't
yeah,
pull people along all the time, and there are those certain spots that you have to be aware, and when I
right,
said that, I don't worry about me. It's because I know when I have a connection, and you
right,
and you can feel it. You can feel the connection. You don't have to say anything.
all
You
right.
just do it. You make music, and that's so important.
Right. Have you encountered situations that you thought, well, actually, this conductor, maybe he's famous, maybe he has a great technique, but it's just not working for singers in general, or not working for me? What, I mean, has that happened? And something maybe less catastrophic than this has happened. How do you deal with that?
Um,
No
I had a
names, no names,
no,
names.
no. I had a situation last year, actually, that
Oh,
I was singing in a very famous venue with some very famous singers and a very famous conductor, and I tried to make it easy on this person, as I always like to,
right,
make my ways.
that's right. Yeah.
Again, as I said before, I'm too old for this. I'm not a kid, and normally I'm the old man in the room. So anyway, but the so we had a little bit of. I didn't think there was conflict, but I guess he did. So after the first orchestra rehearsal, I got fired. So it was, yeah, and it was very surprising to me because I thought everything was going very well, and surprising to my colleagues as well because I had to bid them farewell and leave. But it was really, it doesn't happen very often. But when you have and I think I have opinions, and most singers my age will have opinions, but I try to be as diplomatic as possible. And
Right.
I don't want to embarrass anybody. I don't want to call them out. Although there have been a couple of times when we'll go back to La Scala about 5 years, 6 years ago, where it was so painful that the cast barely got through this ordeal with this conductor, and it was painful. uh we all got together to say we just can't work with this guy. What are we going to do? And they had to keep him on because of contractual things. And we suffered through, and you get done, and you help them because
Mhm.
you don't want to be a fool on the stage. You do your best. And but normally I I love conductors, and
Right.
for me, I've been so fortunate to have been able to work with great conductors like yourself. And
Right.
really, no, I mean, we really have
Right.
a connection, and
Right. Well, and
you
as you
know how to
say,
work with them.
a lot of this is actually unspoken. It just happens. And I
Mhm.
suppose I remember now vaguely the story you are referring to. I mean, it was not such an important conductor anyway. But you probably that person, you know, conductors are insecure, so he
Yeah,
probably felt threatened, and
maybe.
you probably underestimated how threatening you just probably going your way because you needed to go your way was to him. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you should not, as a conductor or as a singer, especially when you are a very established singer, you should not make it about a power struggle. It's just like,
No,
listen, we are together in the boat. We are not in the same position in the boat, but let's try to cross
let's try to
that.
make the boat. keep
Yeah,
going.
go
No,
together in the same direction.
no, that's
And
exactly right.
the problem is that it's not only psychology, it's not only politics, it's not only diplomacy. Some of this is unfortunately also technical. That means
Yeah,
you need to be able, as a conductor, to actually change course very quickly because something is happening in your breathing, in the voice. All of a sudden, the stamina is not the same, and or the staging made you go somewhere and you're losing your footing. And so that kind of flexibility, adaptability in the technique that even the orchestra doesn't notice is not given to everybody. So
no,
a conductor who is insecure with that is going to stick to his tempo, to his beating, to his subdivision, and so on and so on. And in the
yeah,
meantime, the voice is bleeding or speeding or whatever. And then that trust is not there. So it's
no,
not, unfortunately, only about having that personality that is a collaborative personality, and which is the smart way anyway to operate, but it's also having the technical means. And that is true the other way. I have been in a position, um, so now you're telling us in confidence a story. I'm going to give you one. It was a major opera house, major opera house, and I had two casts. And uh, the mega star of the first cast was singing the premiere, but another singer who was not as important in the business was singing the dress rehearsal.
ah,
And
mm,
that singer needed tempo that were totally like at the opposite of the spectrum. Any
yeah,
art that can be done, at 60 up to 92, whatever the aria is, most arias, you have a lot of leeway. I don't have a tempo for any aria. It's the tempo that's going to be working for your voice and so
comfortable. Sure, sure.
comfortable. But one was just at the end of the spectrum, the piece was Tosca. And the other one was really at the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah,
And it was the dress rehearsal. And all of a sudden, I had to protect the premiere. And I could not help that singer as much as I would have had in other situations. That singer was unable to adapt. Another singer would have understood the situation and would have been able to adapt and just, you know
sure.
what, he cannot help here. I'm going to take a breath in the middle of that phrase, or I'm going to sing a little less here so I can manage that, manage that.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
that flexibility and adaptability needs also to come from the stage sometimes.
sure. Absolutely. I mean, especially if you're it, if you're trying to do something as a singer, if you're trying to do something that's for you,
Mm,
why are you doing it? To make
mm,
it about you, or are you
mm,
trying to make a musical statement?
right,
For me, it's always about the music. I'm
right.
not one who'll hold the high note forever because I probably can't. But
Yeah, yeah,
it's really about the music, and that's always been my
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 motto.
goal
Yeah,
is, yeah,
yeah,
is to make it about it will make the composer proud, that you're doing this. And
right. Okay. So you are very smart in the way you approach your career and how you connect this to who you are as a person and what your voice can or cannot. And I think the Berlioz connection is a fascinating one because this is
it was amazing
really
for me.
right.
Yeah,
And in terms of history of music, also, it makes a lot of sense. Now,
right.
so Gregory, you have had this amazing development in your career. Nobody can sing Othello until he dies. So at one point, you have singers who sang Othello, and the last, period, the third period of their career, they move into different roles. Have you are going to sing Othello for the next 15 years. I guarantee you that. But after that, are you thinking of something else? Are you exploring or already thinking ahead? What are the roles you could do? I mean, you could do, some of you go into Herod in Salome or Electra or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny that I've always been curious about Wagner, and of course, I've refused all roles up to this point. And of course, the ones that really interest me are for young men,
Right.
Lohengrin, and
Lohengrin, you would sing an amazing Lohengrin today.
well, I was very intrigued because I heard Pyotr Betsala sing from Bayreuth 2 years ago, and I thought he was just magnificent, and I was intrigued by that role. Tristan, Ortombina is trying to lure me back to Venice with my first Tristan, but these are I'm used to singing bel canto roles for 5 hours.
Mhm.
I've done many of the Meyerbeer things, and William Tell and those long operas. But Wagner is a different animal, and here I tell you why they're so different in all of and the ones that you mentioned, the Strauss things as well. They really don't have any high notes,
Mhm.
and even though I'm at the latter part of this period of the career, the high notes are still there and they're still brilliant enough. But when the tessitura stops at A, that means that you are only in the center of the voice, or in the what the Italians would call the passaggio, all
Mhm.
night long. And then when you have to go to the lower parts, which are very important in those roles, it's rather difficult. So I was offered Die Walküre, and I studied it, and I said, you know what, this is just not for me. I'm not there yet. Um, and
Mhm.
the role that I would love to do for the rest of my life is Peter Grimes. I think that
Right.
that is just a magnificent piece, and we should do that together. It would be a fantastic
Let's do
piece.
it together, and we could do it on stage or in concert. Another, what you say about the tenor held in roles in Wagner and Strauss is totally true. Of course, maybe the imperator in the Franus Chatin is laying a
Mm,
little higher and is more of those high,
maybe I
but it,
sang the apparition of youth in that piece
of
when I
course,
was
well, you could do
youthful.
you, you
From the
could.
pit. But
But Peter Grimes is a fantastic idea. So let's go at the other end, and 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 let's go to the beginning of your career. So what brought you to singing? What was your first
wow.
connection to music?
Well, my first connection to music was a man who basically corralled me and said, "You have to be in my choir." And then I was 14 years old, and I was in high school, and I had no musical training whatsoever. My mother liked to sing, and my father couldn't carry a tune, but I always loved music, and I thought it was okay. I'll try it, and I got into choir in high school and loved it,
Mhm.
and did that my whole high school career. And then I went to universities to study choral conducting. And my first summer in university, we went to Vienna, and our madrigal group of 16 people we were doing the double choir motets of Bach with orchestra in the St. Stephen's Cathedral with Helmut Rilling as the conductor. Now, we had no idea who Helmut Rilling was at that time. This is 1973.
Mhm.
So, but at that time, I was dragged to the opera by one of my colleagues, literally dragged to the opera. I did not want to go to the opera. And so I'm in Vienna, right? And let's go. So we saw Salome in the top level, and I had never heard anything like it in my life. So that performance of Salome struck me so hard that I had to know everything about this
Jean,
musical genre,
right?
and that started it off for me in university, and wanted to know more and more and more. And I did the auditions for the what was called the Lyric Opera School in Chicago back in 1977 is when I did the auditions, and I started there as an apprentice in 1978, and it was the apprentice for 4 years there, and did regional opera for, I don't know, 10 years, 12 years. Most, but the first, including the Lyric Opera School, um, the first 10 years of my career were basically as a comprimario.
Right.
I did, and I did everything. I did 14 itty bitty roles in the lyric opera. I mean, the second Nazarene was my debut in Salome. I was Brühlmann in Werther with Krauss, but and the Salome in my debut was the Grace Bumbry, so that wasn't so bad. I can name drop a lot of people that I sang with.
Right.
I did the Primo Giudice with Pavarotti, and it was pretty cool. Those years were pretty
Right.
cool. So, but learning your craft, but which we really can't do much anymore because
there is something you cannot beat that I did. I
mm,
sang Turandot of Puccini with Montserrat Caballé.
ah, well,
It's not a
you got
lie.
me.
I was in the children chorus. I was in the children chorus. But
So
I can put it in my bio. So I think I win that competition.
you win absolutely. Well, I didn't know what opera was when I was a kid, so anyway. But yeah, so I did Compromarios for a long time, and that really, really helped me. And that's how I met Krauss. I met and got to study with him during those years. And sang with did Macbeth with Capuccilli. I was Malcolm in
Were you
Macbeth.
kind of madly listening to what these people were doing and
It
analyzing it, or just
yes, it was amazing because you got to hear the voice in person,
Mm,
and then you would get, especially the Compromarios that were of the day. You got to hear their voices in person, like in the musical rehearsal. Everybody was sitting around,
mm,
the huge voices, and then you go out in the theater, and only half of them you could hear very well because they were the ones who knew how to project the voices.
right.
And when I was a young singer, and even my colleagues around me, that's what we learned. We
Mhm,
learned that it's not about how big or how loud you can sing; it's how you project the voice.
mhm, mhm.
And that was really important the first, I don't know, 7 or 8 years of my career, learning that. And I love to drop names. I was saying Tristan. I sang Tristan with John Vickers 3 times.
See,
As it was the Shepherd the first time, my first year, second year career, and then I sang Mallet with him a couple of times also.
right.
So that was amazing.
Would you try? I mean, you said you talked to Krauss, and it was actually very insightful and helpful.
Yeah,
You always try to talk to your colleagues, tenors or not tenors, at that time.
I was very fortunate. Back in the day, we didn't have the accessibility that you would normally have. Although I was in the opera center, so I was
Right,
able to be closer to them as we
right,
covered them. So
right.
we were in rehearsals with them. Yeah, I would always ask questions and at least say hello and make them know. And really fun thing that happened to me. I said when I was in third year, I guess it was. We were doing Attila, and Gyaurov was Attila, and I was Uldino. And he's got two scenes with him, but the opening of the second act before his big aria, he has the scene with Uldino. Uldino, Uldin,
Mm,
Anyway, so in Cellini, when I did my first Cellini, the Pope was Gyaurov in Zurich.
mm.
And he came in, and everybody was like, "Oh, Gyaurov," and I was just enthralled. I get to meet him really officially. And I came up to him and said, "Maestro, you probably don't remember me, but we did a show in Chicago together." And he went, Uldino, and he remembered me. It was like
You
it
did.
made my life at that point.
Right,
Yara
right,
remembered me, so that was very cool. So anyway, those things happened, and
right,
you
right,
remember those
right,
kinds of
right.
things. But yeah,
Right. Uh, when you study a role, are you listening to all these old recordings? Are you first going to the score? What is your process when it's a new role?
my yeah, oh, it's off now, but anyway, I had can you see it?
Hernani, yes, okay,
Yeah, I'm doing that in May for the
right,
first time. So
nice,
the process is this. I've got this iPad, and you can get everything on the iPad
right.
now, which is fantastic. So the first thing I do is I read through the whole piece,
Mm,
and then I go and mark my part through, and I usually like to go through the text, and then I put it together with the rhythms, and then I'll try and sing a little bit of it. After I know it, after I know the notes,
Right.
then I'll probably listen to two or three recordings, not so much to get interpretive things. I mean, really, if I can't interpret
Mm.
after 42 years of career, then there's something wrong with me. But I listen for orchestration, what's happening around me, so you kind of know when you get in there what it's going to sound like, instead, because the piano is never a good indication. But
Right.
yeah, I do like to listen in the very beginning. I was really told not to listen to too many recordings, because you're not an interpreter at that time. you
Right.
you don't know how to interpret, so you copy, and
Right.
that's not good.
Right.
But listening to old recordings now is very helpful to me, because
Right.
especially if you get different
Right.
interpretations, which is quite nice. So
You know what
anyway,
works and what doesn't work, or where they are,
yeah, exactly.
so on and so on. What we talked about relationship with conductors. What is it you expect from a stage director?
It's very funny. I have different expectations now. I expect the stage director to know the piece.
Hmm.
Um, I I I really like it if they know what I'm saying,
Right.
especially since we're in a foreign language.
Right.
And I like them to be able to explain to me what they're looking for. I say this always in the very beginning with a stage director. I say, look, whatever your interpretation is, whatever it is that you want to do, I'm here to sell it for you.
Hmm.
So in order for me to do that, you have to convince me of it.
Hmm.
You can't just say, okay, go over here and this is what we're doing.
Right.
I need to know what's going on, and so I can sell it. I'm not one of those people who just goes out and sings and stands and sings. I have to be involved. I got to know what's going on.
Hmm.
And and I learned that more since I started singing this repertoire.
Right.
um
Why is
you
that?
know
What's the difference? What's the difference?
well, there's more drama involved. I mean, more intricate
Right.
drama. I mean, and I always use Otello as the baseline for that.
Hmm.
And I've told my colleagues who are beginning to sing Otello for the first few times, uh, Otello is certainly about how you sing it, but it's also about how you listen. You have to listen to everything that's going on the stage in order to react, because it's
Hmm.
all about you. you
Hmm.
know Otello is the center of it, even though Iago is controlling everything. You have to know what everyone is saying, and you also have to know when not to listen.
Right.
So you have to
Right.
engage yourself in
Well,
doing something else
is
when
in
you're not
denial.
listening.
Yeah. Is in. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so there's more intricate stuff happening, and even in the Manualesco, for example, if you can't establish that love in that first 5 minutes of duet,
Right.
in the first act. I
Right.
mean, you really have to see it. You really have to see that he is struck by this woman.
Right.
If you don't get that, then you lose the whole return.
Right.
When he comes back. So yeah, there's much more drama involved and things that I'm really interested in is being a singing actor. Today, if you're
Right.
not, it's kind of boring. And for as a singer too, it's boring. You
Right.
go out and sing a
Right.
concert instead.
How do you feel about theatrical concepts in opera that really transpose the action somewhere else, stretch the scene, and so on? And personally, I mean, I like it when it's coming from a director that knows what he's doing, and exactly as you say, knows the text, understands the piece as a point of
Yes.
view, and is able to conceptualize and verbalize it. I don't have a problem with this. Even for me as a conductor, it's more interesting because I can approach. I've talked about this a lot. I can approach the piece from a slightly different angle and kind of get the juice of the piece differently. How do
Yeah,
you feel
sure.
this type of staging?
I'm again, as you said, if it makes sense to me, or you can help me to make sense of it, then I
Right.
can sell it.
Right.
I don't have a problem with it. I prefer it when the text makes sense, when you're saying
Right.
something and you're
Right.
actually referring to what you're
Right.
saying. um, but I don't like it when everything is completely changed and it makes no sense.
Right.
Then you're bastardizing the piece. Then you should not be doing the piece, because
Right. And as a
I mean,
singer, you're
there
left.
are words, and there are
Yeah.
there are words that we have to pay attention to, and that's it.
Right. And as a singer, you have to defend something you don't even understand, which is a real
That's
challenge.
the hardest part. That's the
Right.
hardest part.
Right.
Yeah, as a
Right.
singer. Yeah.
So finally, I understand someone told me that you just are going to publish a book about your career. So did you write this? Was it in interview form? What's the story
It
behind?
was a man named Jose Luis Jimenez, who is a writer for the ABC newspaper in San Sebastian, Spain.
Right.
He's a political columnist, but he's also an opera fanatic and an opera
Right.
critic.
Mhm.
I met him in 2012 in Venice. Sorry, 2010 in Coruña, when I was doing William Teller, and we became friends, and we've known each other. He's done a couple of interviews with me, and he's followed my career a lot. And about 2016, I guess 4 years ago, he said, "We should write a book about you." And I said, "Well, have at it, whatever you'd like to do." So we did literally 45 hours of interviews over the last over a year and a half, and he put this book together. It's called Una vida para cantar, a life for to sing, and it's
Right.
been translated into English, a life worth singing. And that's going to come out in about a month. So
Sure.
we'll be able to find
How
it on
can
Amazon.
oh,
It's pretty cool.
okay, okay. And the
Sorry,
title in English again is
a life worth singing.
yeah. Okay.
So yeah, so it's fun. It's from the very beginning of my life, takes us through all the way till
Did you,
today, and
in the
pretty neat.
process of doing the book, writing the book with him in the interviews, did you learn things that you had never thought about your career? Did you conceptualize things in a certain way? Did you actually really get something that was new to you?
I have to say, not so much about my career, but I learned, and it was sort of cathartic, that I had to realize all of these things that I talked about my youth, which I never talk about. I
Mhm.
had kind of a, looking back, it was a little bit of a tough youth. That youth, my father raised me, my grandparents raised me, and my mother was out of the picture. And
Mhm.
anyway, it's all in the book, but it was fun to go through that whole period of my life.
Yeah.
And Jose Luis puts historic things in with that, and so we see where I was in relationship to history. That I grew up in the 60s, so I was a baby in the 50s. So, and so I, in reading it, it's kind of, you relive your life, and it's fun. Most of it is about music, but a lot of it is about the early years of Kunde, so
Right.
that's
Well,
that was a lot of
Gregory,
fun.
it's I'm really so thankful for the time. It's always a pleasure to see you and to talk to you. I can't wait to read that book, and
Well, I'll
I
send you a copy for sure.
I'll find it on Amazon. And I really want to do music with you. So yes, Peter Grimes, Lohengrin. We can add some high notes to Lohengrin.
We'll do it. Yeah, well, Lohengrin, yeah, why not?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Sure.
And
It's
and
great to talk to you too, Maestro. It's been a pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to be with you.
right,
And
right.
looking
So
forward to our next project.
right, and should just play with the snow while I go dive in the ocean. Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
Lots of
Oh,
love.
thanks. All the best to all of you. Thanks.